We cover Easter eggs a lot here on GameRanks, but sometimes there are some truly crazy elaborate ones out there. We talked about some in the past, and now we've got 7 more. If you want to read up on them, they're all linked in the description down below. But let's get started off with talking about them with number 7. Now in the last video we talked about the Illuminati secret from Battlefield 4, but another really elaborate Easter egg is hidden in Battlefield 1, and in some ways the actual resolution to it is a little more satisfying. The basic trick to this one is that you have to find 5 vinyl records hidden around the Fort de Vaux map, which only spawn one at a time. When you bring the vinyls to the gramophone on the map, it'll play this muffled song. Now this part is wild. If you use a French musical cryptogram, you can uncover a hidden message in the music, which is where the Easter egg really starts. This leads to another code on a nearby book to be deciphered, which directs you to some chairs that you have to stand on, which will then flash Morse code at you, and that Morse code is another code, which clues you in on how to reveal the Megalodon. There are 3 valves you have to turn at the same time. Then you have to throw a grenade inside a hole and melee kill 3 people over this puddle that gets created for turning the valves. If the last guy stands in the puddle long enough, the Megalodon will appear and eat you. That's it. That's the end of the Easter egg. Congratulations, you're dead. That is about as pure of an Easter egg as there is. You know, there's no special rewards or anything incentivizing. It's just really weird and a more complicated version of the already existing Megalodon Easter egg, and it's just crazy and fun. Next, over at number 6, let's talk Black Ops 3 and Gorod Krovi. Yeah, zombie maps are kind of a controversial addition to a list like this. It can be argued that they're not real Easter eggs. They're more like quest objectives, considering that many of these things now lead to a special boss and a literal end to the map. But we think this one technically still counts. For one, it's maybe one of the most difficult Easter eggs in the entire series. Zombie maps are famous for their convoluted and very difficult Easter eggs, but this one is just out of control with how tough some of the steps are. Starting out, it's mostly what you'd expect. You have to turn on the power, activate the dragon network, and incubate a dragon egg. All 3 of those things take multiple steps to complete, but they have to be done before you can even think about starting this full Easter egg. Universally considered the worst part of this whole thing is the valve puzzle. There are 6 valves that you have to properly align, but what makes it so annoying is that turning one valve actually affects the others, and the solution is totally random. Thankfully, there's a website that can be used to solve this one for you, so it's not as bad as it used to be, but still. A time limit on top of a random puzzle on top of having to do it while getting swarmed by zombies? It's not very cool, Call of Duty. From there, though, you have to complete 6 tedious challenges along with a boss fight. On this guide we checked out from user MC Sportshawk, they talk about how it took over 30 hours to solve just the valve step of the puzzle, which is insane. Next, over at number 5, you know, everybody knows about the hunt for the Yeti in the Grand Theft Auto games. That and the whole Mount Chiliad mystery were huge for a while. There was even a whole gigantic community dedicated to discovering GTA secrets. Mount Chiliad ended up being a whole bunch of nothing and weirdness, but the Yeti turned out to be sort of a real thing. But Grand Theft Auto isn't the only series with fans obsessed with Yeti hunting. Ghost Recon Wildlands, believe it or not, had a Yeti of its own, and an entire subreddit dedicated to hunting it down. We're not sure where this really all started. Guess people just assumed that the developers were hiding something in the game's massive world map. With the game's title, Update 4, they snuck a message in that said something was seen roaming the mountains, which immediately set the community off. People started finding these totally unmarked caves filled with dead bodies, along with some nonsensical alphabetical coordinates. One location apparently hid the cipher, but it was partially obscured, so they had to figure out the rest of it. Once that was done, they plugged the letters into the cipher to get the actual coordinates, then they had to draw the points on the map and connect them to find the point where they intersect. That's where the supposed Yeti was. If you use the blooded handprint, an enemy sniper called El Yeti will spawn, and if you manage to kill them, you can get their special ghillie suit. That might sound pretty simple, but it's easy to forget just how big the map in Wildlands is. It's crazy. Trying to find any of this stuff is like literally trying to find a needle in a haystack. It took a whole community's efforts to figure this out, and we salute them for that. Next, over at number 4, we have Frog Fractions 2. The game had an ARG that had to be solved for a game to get the update. This is one entry where the game is the Easter egg. There are some ARG elements mixed in with this one as well, but it's also closely tied in with the actual game that we feel like it deserves a mention. Frog Fractions was basically a joke game. It appeared like it was some boring edutainment thing, but the longer you play it, the crazier it gets. It was popular enough that the developers kickstarted a sequel, which had a pretty interesting gimmick. They hid Frog Fractions 2 in a different game. So basically, they made some random game that didn't have Frog Fractions in the name at all, didn't credit to themselves, and they never revealed the release date, and people paid money for this. It reached its goal and everything. Of course, now we know that you can find the hidden game in Glittermitten Grove, this weird fairy city builder thing, but for a while, people had no idea where the game was actually hidden. To help people discover the true identity of Frog Fractions 2, they made an ARG, which is, of course, ridiculously convoluted. Like, look at this page on GameDetectives.net. This is so long. We're not even going to scratch the surface on this stuff, but it incorporated multiple fake websites, podcasts. There was even a Mario Maker level that was a part of this thing. This all led to someone getting a box with a big red button on it, which also needed a key from a separate step of the ARG. So inserting the key and then hitting the button made the thing say, launch sequence initiated, and apparently, at least according to Game Detectives, Glittermitten Grove got a huge update, which was obviously the developers adding Frog Fractions to the game. So basically, the only reason the game is even accessible is because people managed to solve this ARG. Props to them. They probably would have released it at some point anyway, but still, the game was literally impossible to find until after the ARG was solved. Honestly, trying to read about this whole thing makes our brains hurt. It's confusing and weird as hell, and it's Frog Fractions 2. Now down to number 3, in the early days of Bungie, way before Destiny, before Halo, hell, even before Myth: The Fallen Lords, there was Marathon, a really interesting Doom clone with more of a focus on story and atmosphere, and was for a long time a Mac exclusive. The Marathon games were pretty weird, but they really topped themselves in madness with the third game in the series, Marathon Infinity. It's this game where just trying to finish it feels like you're trying to solve an Easter egg. There's an entire website dedicated to trying to decipher the story that's been online since 1995, and it's still updating too. The last update was this year, July 24th, 2021. We are not kidding you. That's how much these games have stuck with people. And of course, for a game with such a strange way of telling its story, it should come as no surprise that it has one of the most hidden secret levels of all time as well. Called Hats Off to 819, it's a multiplayer level that, for some reason, is literally hidden in the game's terminals. There's a string of hexadecimal code hidden in a terminal on the first level and one on the last level. If you combine those two in a text editor and then paste them into ResEdit, which is a discontinued developer tool for Apple PCs, you'd get a loadable level. Now, the level itself is nothing special, but that has got to be one of the strangest secrets we've ever seen in a game. Down to number 2, let's talk Environmental Station Alpha. Metroidvania games do love their secrets, but we don't think we've ever seen one that's as Easter egg heavy as this game. It looks like a pretty humble game at first glance, and actually beating it normally doesn't really reveal anything too unusual, but if you start scratching at the surface, more and more layers of the game just keep getting peeled away. A lot of games talk about how the real game starts after you finish it, but in this game's case, that really actually might be true. This thing gets a lot more complicated from there though. Like in games like Fez, you're gonna have to be able to decipher an alien language to even start all this. There are keys to collect by doing counterintuitive things in random spots, a clock room that changes depending on what items you have equipped, which affect what rooms you'll have access to, a non-Euclidean maze to navigate, and so much more. Like, remember, this game is normally just a regular exploration side-scroller. There isn't any fourth wall breaking stuff or strangeness in the main game. All this only starts happening after you beat it. There's so much to all of this, but suffice to say, there's a whole hell of a lot here. There are 3 extra endings you can unlock by doing all this weird stuff, and it's probably something that most people who play the game will never even see. Now down to number 1, here it is, the granddaddy of elaborate Easter eggs in video games. Now during the 90s, games like Half-Life, Unreal, Quake had prolific and massive modding communities, and people were always trying to top themselves in order to stand out from the crowd. One way map makers did this was by hiding secrets in their maps. We have no idea where this practice really started, but once people started noticing them, the secrets just kept getting bigger, crazier, and more elaborate and strange as years went on. Now, for guys like Hondo and Nipper, just any old regular Easter egg wouldn't be enough. In some cases, the Easter egg sections of their maps would absolutely dwarf the map itself. Sometimes the Easter eggs became the whole point. They were crass, bizarre, and sometimes really creepy, but a certain section of players loved what they were doing. Treyarch even has gone on to say that they were pretty much directly inspired by the secrets and custom maps for games like Half-Life and the original Counter-Strike, so if you hate how convoluted the Easter eggs are in zombie maps, these are the people to blame. Maybe the most infamous of these maps is Hondo's 5 AM, an absolutely sprawling secret map that's legendary for just how convoluted and confusing and difficult it is if you want to complete the secret. If anything, it's even more mysterious these days than it was back then when it came out. Most of the guides that were written back then have disappeared, so you're pretty much left to fend for yourself for some of these maps. Still, if you're a real masochist or you're just curious about video game history, these weird-ass Easter egg maps can be a ton of fun to explore, at least for a little while. Seriously, some of these things are nearly impossible to solve. Look at this mess. Like, how is anybody able to figure this out? We have no idea. But those were some more crazy elaborate Easter eggs that we wanted to share with you guys. We dived a little bit deeper into video game history, so we'd love to hear what you think, and we'd love to hear if you have any other suggestions. So let us know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and maybe learned something, clicking a like button is the best way you can help us out. We would really appreciate that. And again, if you want to read up on any of these, props to the people that discovered them. We're gonna link everything the best we can down in the description. But thank you guys for coming around, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.